Good morning. I'm the Reverend Rachael Hayes, minister of this congregation. I use she, her pronouns. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old, visitors, newcomers, and long-timers. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday in our midst, we are stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Though children are always welcome to hang out with us in the sanctuary, and we're having a storybook today, our religious education classes are having a community day and starting downstairs. So all the kids are already downstairs, I think. Today we are honoring the indigenous peoples of this land, those who lived long ago, those living now, and those who are yet to be born. We gather together as a community of seekers to honor the interdependence of life, to respect the dignity of all, and to honor the land we walk humbly upon. We walk upon the traditional territories of the Nipmuc, Norwottuck, and Pocumtuck, the original nations of this land. In the year 1658 of the colonizers' reckoning, the British real estate speculator John Pynchon swindled the land east of the Long River Quanetiqua in the Pocumtuck place known as Norwottuck from 3 men of Norwottuck named Umpanchla, Quanquant, and Chickwallop. In the contract, Umpanchla, Quanquant, and Chickwallop granted Pynchon and the other colonizers leave to use the land, to hunt, fish, farm, and dwell. The contract gave no right to exclude others from the land, but the people of Norwottuck found themselves excluded from their own place. The Pocumtuck people who lived along the Long River resisted the colonizers in King Philip's War, a coordinated effort to eject the English colonists. Many died in the war. Women and children, as well as men. Many died of smallpox and other European diseases. Those who survived the war and disease took refuge with the Abenaki people to the north. The Nipmuc people, who lived east of the Long River, resisted the colonizers in King Philip's War. Many died. The English forced those who survived to convert to Christianity, to assimilate into English Christian lifestyles, and to remain in praying towns. Unconverted Nipmuc people outside of praying towns lived in danger of being murdered or captured and trafficked into slavery in the Caribbean. When this town was incorporated in the colonizers' understanding, the colonial governor named it after a British general who promoted the genocide of Native peoples by biological warfare with blankets contaminated with smallpox. Many Native people died. Out of respect for them, I will not say his name on this day. The town is still named for him. Many places in this continent still bear his name. Our congregation still bears his name. Our religious forebears believed in the project of manifest destiny, westward expansion, and the possession of this continent in the colonial understanding. The American Unitarian Association sponsored a site of cultural genocide in Montana. Reverend Henry Bond kept Crow children at his school and prevented their parents from visiting them. We do not know what terrors Bond, his wife, and the other missionaries inflicted on these children as they indoctrinated them into white US American culture. For all of this history of genocide and terror, Native people still live and call out for the return of the land. Nipmuc, Abenaki, and Native peoples from other places in this continent live among us. We are called, though we have not yet answered the call, to be in relationship with our native neighbors, to amplify their voices in society and to our governmental representatives. As we hold this history, this present day call for justice, and our responsibility to future generations, let us return to these principles to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry forth as we journey and worship together. Blessed be. I invite you to say our congregation's chalice lighting words with me. We light this flame to invite a world of peace, where we heal the wounds, where we share what we have with one another, where justice is another word for relationship, and we listen for what love has to say. I invite you to rise in spirit, in body, in voice, in any way that feels right to you today, to sing hymn number 142, Let There Be Light. That most of the kids are already downstairs. I wanted to tell you the story of Hiawatha and the Peacemaker, the story of the great law of peace of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois peoples. And I cannot do better writing it myself than this story by Robbie Robertson, who you might know as the songwriter of the band, but also is a very gifted storyteller in many ways. He is of Cayuga and Mohawk descent, and I love this picture book. The slides show the pages, or, I mean, if you want to come and sit on the carpet, we can do that. But I think this is a really beautiful book. Yeah, come on down, Brenda. This is Hiawatha and the Peacemaker, words by Robbie Robertson, pictures by David Shannon. A fierce scream echoed through the woodlands. Was it a dream? An eerie steam crept up from the ground, and the smell of burning pine filled the air. My blurred vision came into sharp focus. Everything I had ever known had been burned to the ground. My wife and 3 beautiful daughters had been killed in battle. Everything was gone. Only one man was capable of such horror, the evil chief, Tadodaho. I took shelter up the river. I had only a small fire and a place to sleep. I dressed my wounds with leaves I gathered from the bush. Days, then weeks went by. Consumed by anger and hunger and sleeplessness, I could think only of revenge. The sun rose early one morning and burned the mist off the river. It was as if a path had been cleared for what happened next. A blinding reflection came off the water, and from it a man paddled gently toward me. As he reached the shore, I realized the reflection was caused by the sun hitting his hand-carved white stone canoe. "Who are you? Why have you come here?" I asked. He answered only with a smile and handed me a string of wampum shells as an offering. We stood quietly, observing each other, and then he spoke softly, stumbling over his words. I know of your pain. I know of your loss. I carry a message of healing. I have come to tell you of the great law. Fighting among our people must stop. We must come together as one body, one mind, and one heart. Peace, power, and righteousness shall be the new way. I considered his words, but didn't believe him. Our people governed only through fear. I had never thought peace among our tribes was a possibility. The man spoke again, "Travel with me to the land of the Mohawk and let us spread the good word. As you can hear, my voice is quiet and my words difficult to understand. I know that you speak with power and confidence and that your voice carries straight to the heart. I need your help, my friend. I need you to help me carry this message." I agreed to travel with him and help carry his message. And so I, Hiawatha, came to tell the story of the great peacemaker. I stared at his stone canoe, bewildered by its ability to float. But we paddled off, and with every impossible moment that the canoe glided across the water, I became more of a believer. When we arrived at the land of my people, the Mohawk, we were greeted warmly. The chief and the elders were summoned, and we gathered in a circle. A few clan mothers looked on with curiosity and concern. The peacemaker closed his eyes and placed his hand on my back. Somehow, he had the power to move his message through me. I began to speak his words. Peace, power, and righteousness shall be the new way, I said. We must join together. All nations will become one family. Our people shall have one body, one mind, and one heart. This is the message of the great law. The clan mothers nodded in agreement, and a sense of relief spread over me. But then the war chief spoke. "We respect your message, but we cannot join you," he said. "How can we know if your words are true? Tadodaho is too strong, too violent. Our people must be prepared to fight." The peacemaker quietly stuttered. "The great law is more powerful than any one man. We will return with proof that our nations can join together." As the peacemaker and I traveled toward the land of the Cayuga, he spoke to me of healing through forgiveness. My mind, still filled with hatred, and my heart, still filled with the pain of my loss, could not comprehend this. When we arrived, we learned that the Cayuga tribe had been devastated in an attack by Tadodaho and his warriors. My mind was flooded with images of the battle that had taken my family. Rage filled my body. I turned to the peacemaker and yelled, "We will never be free." In an attempt to soothe me, the peacemaker asked me to sit with him and the Cayuga Council. He looked deep into my eyes as he spoke to the people. "I do not see defeat," he said. "What I see is a passage to a new way of life. Join me, and together we can spread peace rather than war, love rather than hate, unity rather than fear." The peacemaker placed his fist over his heart. A feeling of strength and trust ran down my spine. With new hope, we headed toward the great hill to see the Seneca people. The Cayuga chief followed us in his canoe. Together we paddled as one nation. We were met by 15 armed braves. For the first time, the peacemaker showed signs of worry. We were surrounded by warriors and led to the center of the Seneca village. The Seneca chief approached the circle, and the guards closed in on us. With a wave of his hand, the warriors lifted their spears. But then he nodded, and the guards drove their spears deep into the dirt. The Seneca chief sat down and told us that the wind had carried our message from the land of the Cayuga. The Seneca people wanted to learn about the peacemaker and the great law. "We will all perish if we continue this violence. A change must come, and the time is now. Alone, we will be broken," I said, "but together we are more powerful than the greatest warrior." The Seneca chief trailed us in his canoe, and together we rode as two nations. Guided by the moon, we trekked through the forest to the land of the Oneida people. We were halfway to the camp when the snap of a stick was heard through the trees. Suddenly, the earth beneath our feet gave way. We hit the ground and then were engulfed by a giant net. The Oneida chief stood towering over us. "I've spared your life," he declared. "Why would two chiefs and two strangers be so foolish as to enter our territory in the darkness?" His men dragged us through the dirt and bound our hands. The peacemaker explained that we had joined the Cayuga and Seneca nations in the name of peace. But his words had no power with the Oneida. Then the peacemaker turned to me and said, "Tell your story, Hiawatha. Tell us of your great loss." I spoke of my pain and my hatred for Tadodaho. I told the Oneida that my wife and 3 daughters had been killed by the violent world we had created. But as I spoke, I felt something come over me, forgiveness. I had not been able to save my family, but on this journey, I had been able to forgive myself. I began to understand the meaning of the great law, and I turned to the peacemaker and placed my fist over my heart. With a knowing nod, he smiled. A warrior approached us, and he untied all of us, one by one. Rather than feel the anger that had consumed me, I now remembered the joy of my family. I was joined by the Cayuga chief, the Seneca chief, the peacemaker, and lastly, the Oneida chief. Together, we traveled as 3 nations. The time had come to return to the Mohawk people with proof of our message. When we arrived, they were impressed to see the 3 chiefs with us. The clan mothers had a glowing look of approval, but the Mohawk chief told us that word of our mission had traveled to Tadodaho. His evil is too great, he said. Your message will only bring harm to our people. Angered by his lack of faith, the Oneida chief pressed the sharpened tip of his staff under the chin of the Mohawk chief. We no longer use violence, said the peacemaker as he reached out and lowered the staff from under the chief's chin. The peacemaker led us to the tallest oak that towered over the Mohawk River. I will climb this tree, and your men shall cut it down, but I will not perish. The river will catch my body and carry it to safety. Then you will know that my words are true. The men chopped down the massive tree. It crashed into the icy waters, and the peacemaker vanished. I stood silent, stunned by this foolish stunt. I feared the peacemaker had sacrificed himself at a crucial point in our journey. An elder clan mother approached the circle of chiefs. With 4 younger women by her side, this man has come with a message of peace and unity, but you greet him with closed ears and closed minds, she said. You reject Tadodaho, but you behave just like him. She looked at me, and I could feel her sympathy for the death of my daughters. A tear ran down her cheek. Let us hope the peacemaker is alive, she said. While you sharpen your weapons, I will pray for a miracle. The Mohawk chief was transformed by her words and nodded. The other women stepped in to console her, and we all quietly walked back to the camp. When we arose in the morning, smoke from the river's edge caught our attention. We hurried down to find the peacemaker sitting by a fire, patiently waiting for us. The elder clan mother draped a blanket around his shoulders, and relief spread among us. Filled with emotion, the Mohawk chief agreed to follow us in his canoe to the land of the Onondaga to confront Chief Tadodaho. Together, we paddled as 4 nations. The wicked Tadodaho lived separately from his people. Bands of warriors stood guard day and night. When we arrived, they yelled and pushed us away. The peacemaker kept his hands by his side to discourage violence, but the chiefs and I pushed back. A figure appeared in the doorway of the dwelling. Hunched over, withered and twisted, Tadodaho was a horrifying sight. Sickness from the evil within had taken over his body. Scales covered much of his skin, and snakes slithered through his hair and onto his shoulders. No words came from his mouth. Instead, a forked tongue produced a thick hissing sound. My anger returned, and I wanted to destroy Tadodaho. The chiefs continued to push against the warriors. The fighting grew until something unexpected happened. A soft, haunting melody of purity and truth came floating through the air. Spellbound, all lowered their weapons. The hymn was coming from the lips of the peacemaker. His melody had stopped the fighting. As the song drifted through the air, the moon crossed in front of the sun, darkening the blue sky. This miracle stunned the warriors, and they pulled back in fear. But the rest of us were enchanted by the glory of the hymn, and we joined in singing. Tadodaho cursed the sky, waving his scepter and showing no sign of fear. As the peacemaker finished his singing, the moon passed, revealing the sun again, more beautiful than before. The peacemaker asked me to make medicine for Tadodaho's sickness. He said that where there is darkness, we must bring light, and that it is by forgiving that we are set free. I gathered roots and herbs for the medicine. But how could I help heal a man who had brought me such misery? How could I forgive him? Yet I put my heart and soul into the potion, and with this action, my anger disappeared. I entered the hut with the medicine paste and fresh water. I explained that every day some of the paste must be mixed with water and drunk. Tadodaho grabbed the medicine from my hands and drank. His strained breathing eased. The evil look in his eyes softened. He appeared to wonder why a man to whom he'd brought so much pain would help to heal him. The peacemaker told Tadodaho that we would return in 3 days and to continue taking the medicine. We traveled back to the people of the Cayuga, Mohawk, Seneca, and Oneida and told them of our encounter. On the 3rd day, a mass of people followed us to the land of the Onondaga to see Chief Tadodaho once again. Tadodaho's voice had returned, but he was still hunched over and sickly. The peacemaker approached him and, with all the tribes watching, placed his hands above his head and chanted. Tadodaho let out a scream, and the snakes slithered from his hair into the grass where they belonged. Everyone followed the peacemaker to a tall white pine. He placed his hand on my back, and once again I spoke for him. People of all nations must now come together as one. Beneath this tree we shall bury all of our weapons of war. This will symbolize the end of our fighting. The men uprooted the white pine and threw their weapons into the hole. Now we will replant this tree, and it shall be called the Tree of Peace. As I looked at Tadodaho, the scales on his skin began to disappear. The peacemaker placed his fist over his heart, and again I spoke. As 5 nations, we will bring forth peace, power, and righteousness. The women of our tribes shall appoint the chiefs, and as one people we shall live under the protection of the great law. All voices will be heard as we now vote before action is taken. I looked at Tadodaho, and the once crooked man now stood upright. Atop this great white pine shall live an eagle that will look over all 5 nations, and that eagle shall be you, Tadodaho. You will be the great keeper of peace and the protector of all the people. The men and women of the Mohawk Nation began to stomp their feet in unison. Clapping came from the Cayuga. A chant formed between the Onondaga and the Oneida, and the Seneca pounded drums. The rhythm grew louder in perfect time, and the melody soared through the pines. I looked over to Tadodaho, but he was gone. A beautiful scream echoed through the woodlands. And as 5 nations, we looked up to see an eagle perched atop the Tree of Peace. I invite you, after all of that listening, to rise as you are willing and able in body, spirit, heart, and voice, to sing Far Too Long by Fear Divided, which is number 160 in your hymnal. This poem is Remember by Joy Harjo, who was the U.S. Poet Laureate and is a Muskogee Creek woman. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon, know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth, we are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance language is, that life is. Remember. In the story, the peacemaker comes to Hiawatha in the depths of his grief. It is in forgiving himself, in bearing witness to his loss, in finding his grief reflected by the Mohawk clan mother, in caring for Tadodaho in his illness and forgiving him to make the medicine, that Hiawatha is healed in his grief. Tadodaho seems like a monster until Hiawatha meets him with kindness. Tadodaho killed his family, and many of the secondary characters in the story are also mourning loved ones killed by Tadodaho. It makes sense that everyone is afraid of him. It is a human thing to make our enemies into monsters. But his reign of violence only ends when we see him as human, and when peace is more important than revenge or even defense. The Haudenosaunee people, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk, and later Tuscarora, have told this story for hundreds of years as the founding of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Some say that the Great Law of Peace, the constitution of the separate nations forming one great, powerful, cooperative confederacy, was influential on the United States Constitution and is one of the oldest participatory democracies in the world. What would it look like if we allowed our grief to truly break us open? Mourning, allowing our grief to move through us and change us, can be a passageway to a world of more justice and more compassion. Grief in which we are held by community and meet one another in gentleness is love that can transform us and the world. May it be so. To join me in the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, there we go, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. A few announcements. Parents Group and Coming of Age for Youth begins this Friday evening. Religious education families of all ages, please watch for an email about that. Join us for the Transgender Inclusion in Congregations program designed for UU congregations looking to deepen the practice of welcome. The first discussion of lectures 1 and 2 is on Saturday, November 16th. Please reach out to Robin to RSVP by October 23rd and receive the congregation's coupon code. The Committee on Shared Ministries is hosting cottage meetings to reflect on our congregational mission update. What do you love about our congregation? What do you dream about for us? Sign up online during October. Meetings take place during November. Link is in your email announcements. Details and more information about everything are in that weekly announcements email, which you can get by filling out one of the small clipboards at the door or emailing our Director of Programs and Operations, Leah, at office@uusocietyamherst.org. Thank you to Brenda and our choir for the beautiful music today. Thank you to Kyle and Steve on tech. Thank you to greeters Jeff and Lauren, and to our social hour hosts, Fran and Jenny. We are about to sing our closing song. You're welcome to stay right where you are and know that you are held in the love of this congregation, or you're welcome to rise and move into a circle along the outer aisle and form a container for all that we hope this circle will be. To place your hands over your heart, reach out, hold the hands of somebody near you as we sing our closing song. as always, go in peace.